interview experience so far? How
Awesome.
are you doing?
I love being here. It's the highlight of my year.
Excellent. Any surprises or things really taking you this year?
Well, the experience is it's gone beyond my expectations from last year. It was like, I thought last year was amazing, and this year I'm just like, my mind has been blown.
Fantastic.
So many people, so much excitement, so much learning. I oftentimes sit in the corner and observe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Fellow introvert here.
Exactly.
Get in the corner over here.
Totally.
All right, well, keep those questions coming in. Are you ready to jump in?
Jump in.
Okay, great.
Ask me anything.
So right off the bat, do you see SAP Ariba still on the market in 10 years' time?
Okay, who asked that?
Oh no. Is this a callback? Oh, man, okay.
Somebody just wants to wind me up right out of the gate. It's going to become further and further constrained. It's in a box, and it's not going to really ever go away in my lifetime, but it's going to become less and less relevant. And I talk a lot about process orchestration because that's that one interface into the entirety of our procurement, and that's why I'm really bullish on process orchestration, and that's Zip, Oro, Omnia, LevelPath, tons and tons of innovation happening there. And when we talk about Gen AI, which everybody knows I love talking about, that's where it's going to be. And so you're never going to, eventually users and suppliers are not going to interact or transact with Ariba. It's going to increasingly be at that higher level, that process orchestration level. So it will be okay if you have SAP Ariba. Well, it'll never be okay, but you'll have it in the background. It'll just be a little engine sitting back there. The problem is the interface, and it's no longer necessary. But of course, the problem for all of you is that it's going to create some uncomfortable conversations with SAP, because why would you write 6, 7, 8-figure checks to them for something that's just a little transaction engine in the background? So no doubt in my mind, over that next 10 years, it will decrease.
Great. All right, we've got another software question. Lots of solutions pitching enterprise software. What about mid-market, SMEs, and beyond North America and Western Europe? Is this a wide open opportunity ready for the taking?
Absolutely, huge opportunity. And if you look at the process orchestration tools and a lot of the procure tech tools, not just here, but others that are even emerging, they're starting mid-market. And I actually think that's better for them to work their product out and then move to the enterprise. And so I'm seeing the most innovation at the mid-tier level. So there's no excuse not to use procurement. And Zip in particular has been on this like gigantic juggernaut, and it's been in the mid-tier market. And eventually, I actually would argue that these changes in our procurement op model will actually be driven by what's happening in the mid-market, because they have to work with automation first and good data first, because they don't have the big budget to hire 500, 600, 1,000, 1,500 procurement people. So they're leading tech first. And I'll just add to that, in Silicon Valley, when we had all those layoffs and all the tech companies, they're doing more with less because they had to. And so eventually that trend will make it into the enterprise market. And so as procurement at the enterprise level, we have all the things I keep hammering on, we have to keep doing them, and we're seeing them at the mid-market. And just last bit, there is a lot of opportunity in the non-Western Europe and non-American markets that's largely untapped.
Great. I don't know if this is a kind of a duplicate already, but what are your thoughts on the potential replacement of ERP systems?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So my new book, this morning there's...
Yes,
that's never going to get old. Well, it may get old for my colleagues, but so I talked about people, tools, and intelligence. The tools bit in the book, I spend a lot of time dismantling the ERPs, because the future is third-party data exchange. And I opened the book talking about my vaccine experience getting the COVID-19 vaccine, and all the different pieces of handoffs between third parties, and how all of it came down to a piece of paper, a paper card where my information was, which I thought was, in the digital age, colossally ridiculous. And because I have on my watch, I have all kinds, my passport, my transit cards, credit cards, and I have to have this piece of paper. And the problem is all of these enterprises are not able to or incented to exchange information. And so the thesis of my book is we have to get good at third-party data exchange. Enterprise and suppliers, enterprise and governments, enterprise and NGOs, and understand how data is coming in and out of our enterprise with third parties. So I spend a lot of time dismantling the fallacy of the ERP, because the ERP, even if I give you a magic wand and you put in a perfect end-to-end singular ERP system, it doesn't solve tomorrow's problems, which is this data exchange problem. And to do that, I spend a lot of time talking about cloud infrastructure. So whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, to me, that's the future. And it's going to take, sort of back to the SAP question, it's going to take a long time to get there. But make no mistake, the ERP is dead. We just haven't accepted it. And I know to some of you out there, you're already thinking, oh, but the CIO says we're an SAP shop. I spend an equal amount of time dismantling the CIO position. So CIOs should not read my book because I make it very clear that they're no longer relevant. The ERP is not relevant, neither are CIOs.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on from there.
Was that?
No, it's okay. Sometimes grief takes a while. Yeah. What startups or new technology are you most excited about this year?
Hands down, 100% process orchestration, back to my thing. I love that market. And you're already seeing other pivots, like Fair Market is getting into this. If you look at my spider chart and all the complexity, that's just a theoretical construct. Eventually, you're going to have one login on one tool, and the process orchestration tool will manage all that complexity. And so we run the risk of everybody else being just little microservices, sort of like SAP becomes just a little transaction engine. So a lot of those tools become transaction engines in the back. To me, that's highly, highly disruptive to not only big S2P, but also all the procure tech startups. So I think that's hands down really excited about that. I do appreciate data solutions, so anybody in data and intelligence creation. So there's some, but if you want to do a startup, do it in intelligence creation. Big fan of that.
Good to know. All right, next question. What is your view on low-code or no-code solutions like Microsoft 365 powered by Copilot now?
I'm going to separate the question. So the no-code, low-code thing is good in that it's drag and drop. We can create a process here. I don't think that's the future, though. That's solving yesterday's problem. And so we're moving more towards, this is when I said Gen AI will be that piece. That's the second part of that, the Copilot, where you start to see intelligence drive this. And so let me give you a good example. When I log in, I should have a user experience designed to me. Not some that you designed. It should be based on who I am, what I do in the system, what I've done historically in the system. Most of us have Netflix, I assume, and all of us have we see different things. We see it because the way we interact with Netflix, it's always testing us. Do you like this or do you like this? Oh, I like this. So then it gives you more of this. And why do we not have that in the enterprise? Because when you start to have that, Netflix doesn't have a process for you and a process for me and a process for you and a process for him. Netflix has it just has intelligence, and it knows what I like versus what you like and you like. That's where the Copilot, the Gen AI, when it meets process orchestration, process management goes away too. We don't need to do process management. And so when I talk about intelligence tools in people, notice process is not in there because we waste too much time on process management.
Great. Got a few questions more on the personal side now.
Oh.
Folks asking, let's see, where did this one go?
This could go sideways.
Oh, let's see. Oh, gosh. Well, yes, you consult clients all around the world. You travel. You wrote a new book. How do you stay motivated? And then someone else asking, what does your day-to-day look like as a partner?
Okay. So how do I stay motivated? It's funny. I get distracted very easily, and I had trouble finishing this book But and this is why I thank Mateus, is I had a deadline. I knew that I had to launch today. So what I did about 18 months ago when I was busy wasting time on YouTube, well, I wouldn't say I was wasting time, but I was spending a lot of time,
Yes.
is I printed out a picture of me presenting here last year, and I posted it on my whiteboard so that every time I walk in and out of my office, I had to see that picture of me on the stage, and that created just a little bit of anxiety every day so that I could, or I'd be on a call and I'd just be standing there staring at it thinking, I should not be on this call right now. I should be writing this or doing that or whatever. And so it's a great motivator, and I've spent a lot of time. One of the bits of research I went down the rabbit hole but didn't find anything was all these ways to improve your productivity, and I liked a lot of them, but they didn't work for me. And then the other piece that I think is kind of funny is despite my best efforts, I got very distracted. I get very distracted. And so as a gift to myself, I was debating actually buying myself an analog typewriter to write my next book, because then I could just sit there and it has a very tactile response, and then I would just like write it out on paper or type it out on paper, because that way I'm not getting distracted. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Then what is my day-to-day as a partner? Is that me? I hope that's not me. Sorry.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
We're good.
We're back. We're back.
Or did we lose it?
We've got a quick tech solution.
Yeah, there we go.
Give it up for the crew, everybody. They're working hard. Yeah.
It's a lot of Teams and Zoom calls and responding to LinkedIn, and so carving out time to write is another sort of challenge. But I talk to people all day and throughout the day, and just constantly either responding to emails externally, and my colleagues in the audience know I don't respond to internal emails, and and then responding to stuff on LinkedIn and posting LinkedIn and whatnot. And so now it's going to get even worse, because I am opening up a whole series of new social channels. So that's kind of my thing. But basically, I just talk to anybody. My door's always open. I talk to people. I take anybody's calls. And then I do a lot of workshops where I'll come in and talk about inspire the team, torture the team, scare the team, and so I do a lot of workshops like that, which I think are fun.
Excellent. Let's take a sec, get the Slido QR code back up there. If anyone's got any other questions to send in, go ahead. Here comes the next question. How will the invoice clearance model adoption in Europe shift the market for S2P digitalization?
Well, we've been on a path where, I feel like I keep the versions of this question. This has got to get automated. And this is another place where intelligence can come in, not so much Gen AI, but just more general intelligence, because humans in that process is just a waste of time. And we can have much better auditor compliance and much better tighten those payment terms and the reconciliation in ways that, this is why I really dislike how we just throw people at the problem, because we actually have we have such great technology and intelligence. Back to my Netflix example, why are we doing all of this? Why do we not have P2P much better? So I think this is a time issue. We just have a time and an efficiency gain. Efficacy, that's what I was looking for. Time and efficacy.
Efficacy, that's a tough one. All right, speaking of regulation, what do you think the biggest regulatory challenges facing you are?
Me?
It says you, but maybe the field in general could broaden it. Biggest regulatory challenges.
I think the disconnect between North America, or I should say the United States, and the rest of the world. Well, actually, I'll add two parts to this, because I think there's regulatory and then I think there's risks. I think the regulatory is the fact that the United States seems hell-bent on moving to the 1950s. That would have been funnier if I didn't mess that up. And just fighting anything just because we just want to throw a tantrum like a 2-year-old. So like ESG is stifled in the United States. At the same time, you have Europe passing a lot of great legislation and moving forward, and other countries in APAC are doing a lot of interesting things too. So you have 3 different, or 4 with the Middle East, 4 different geographies going 4 different regulatory directions. And that doesn't even count individual countries or states, and because in the US we have California doing something different than Texas. I think regulatory is gonna be a real mess and going forward. And that's why digital is so important, because we have to be able to turn on a dime, whether it's printing new labels in every country, every locale, whatever. And then that's why traceability is so important, because we have to know what comes from where and why and how. So.
Yeah. Speaking of ESG, got a question. What's the best approach to tackle the increasing data demand from suppliers? ESG in parentheses.
We need to revamp the way we do ESG reporting, because we don't have a clear standard, and the standards change. And the problem with ESGs is one of those umbrella terms that can mean a lot of things, and we can overcomplicate it. And I hate overcomplication, because it just allows us to spend a lot of money and not make a lot of progress. And so I do have a chapter on ESG, and sort of this whole questionnaire thing, this whole scraping of data, this whole reporting thing, those are all fine to do, but that's phase 0. And we really need to move to more solutions where we're getting into at the production level, and what our third-party suppliers are doing at the production level, and or any third party that's interacting with us. And we are just we're just at the infancy of this, and there's so much hype and there's so much talk, and again, I'll use efficacy. Our efficacy is very, very low in this right now. So.
Yeah. All right. This one, I don't know if this will be controversial or not. Should teams axe the procurement department and integrate procurement to other organizational functions?
This question's come up over and over for the last, I think, couple decades. I don't care where it sits. I think what you need is procurement capabilities in every function. So if you want to center or decentralized, I don't care. What I want is or digital underpinning all of it, so that, back to the invoice question, back to my Netflix example, we want the outcomes driven without the users having to think about it. If I just say, I want a new laptop, like, it should just happen in the background with intelligence, not with somebody, not some GPO or GBS team or group purchasing organization or global business services backfilling that. That should just be automated. Amazon did a marvelous job of that, and for on the consumer side, and that's 1,000 times more complicated than in our enterprise. So I think it's less about disbanding procurement, or like those questions are interesting to muse on, but if we just put in a good digital capability and backbone with intelligence, then it becomes less relevant.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think.
Yeah. Okay. This might be boiling it down to 3 very simple things, but folks asking for the 3 key things we should be doing right now to be efficient and tech fluent in procurement.
Well, you're doing one of them. Absolutely, everybody here is doing one of them, and that's being in places like this. There's very few of them, but this is, to me, the best conference for building your competency. Just walk around the 2 exposition, just listen. There's so much great information being chatted. So that's one. Number 2 is experiment. One of the, I don't care if you experiment with ChatGPT, or you do with any one of the solutions out on the floor, or you just go to AWS or Azure and start poking around. Learn, learn, learn. And in that realm, just go to YouTube. I write about how in my procrastination, I found myself being taught by the YouTube algorithm. The YouTube algorithm teaches me and surfaces for me everything I need. It thinks I need to know about business, ESG, risk, and cloud technology, and supply chain. So I don't even have to search anymore. It brings it to me. So go do that, use that, and then also understand how that algorithm works. And then the last bit is so we did be here, try it, and then talk to people. You don't have to talk to me. Like, everybody on stage, There's others that didn't make it here. There's others in other events. Talk to people. Like I had to reset my career back in 2016. And the way I did it was just one-on-one, talking to you, talking to you, talking to you. And I just learned. And that's why my door is always open, because I learn from every conversation that I have, so.
Got a question off of your YouTube comment. Any favorite channels you want to recommend? Anything come to mind?
There are so many, and I have a list published on my personal website, the drelouise.com, and then I have a subpage for all the resources from the book, and in it I have a playlist of all the videos I watched while procrastinating. But also you can see all the list of folks that I follow. And there's some, like, I don't know, you kids like watch Mr. Beast. I think he's really fascinating, not only because he produced compelling content, but if you listen to his behind the scenes and how he thinks about making use of YouTube, it's like mind-blowing. And so, I'll watch things like that all the way up to, I watch a random array of stuff, and I think whatever interests you will take you on that journey.
Excellent. My YouTube's just a lot of cooking videos, so I'm sure it's more interesting than that. Excellent. All right. You talk a lot about the leading edge of procurement technology, but there are a lot of companies out there who only use Excel. What advice would you give those companies as to where they should start?
Yeah, well, first, please stop using Excel. It is, for those of you that saw my presentation this morning, what's the mantra in cybersecurity? Don't click on the attachment. Don't click on the attachment. Don't click on the attachment. And every time you send an Excel file, what are we doing? We're clicking on the attachment. We are so susceptible to ransomware in our day-to-day operations when people tell me they exchange data in Excel. That said, you have to, in most cases, there's usually an investment in a source-to-pay system that's not working well, or an ERP system, or both. That's why we're using Excel. We have to extract the data and email it off to the supplier, and they send it back. We have to start to put in solutions that start to exchange that data collaboratively. And it's not, oh, I'm going to buy this tool and tell the supplier. Work with the suppliers, understand their comfort level, bring them into the conversation. Because if there's one thing I would tell you in this new world where we're going, our architectures have been, oh, we're the enterprise, we're at the top of the pyramid, everybody else are in service to us as the enterprise, and we can flex our muscles and bend the supplier to our will. Not in this disruptive world. So my argument is we have to get ourselves off the top of the mountain and understand that we're working together collaboratively, and we have to federate our data. So while you might have your tier one supplier might be a competitor to somebody else, and they might supply your competitor, or they might actually be a potential opportunity for investment or for partnership. But we can only know that if we have good data exchange. And so bring them into the conversation, because there's nothing worse than dictating to the suppliers. It doesn't work that way anymore. The world changed. And so we have to get really good at this multi-enterprise data exchange.
Yeah, this goes into some of that balance. Someone asking, how do you find balance in the need for supply chain transparency and the risk of loss of IP and exposure of critical supplier relationships?
Well, the last part of that, this is why I spend a lot of time talking about risk, because we're not really doing risk management. Most enterprises are doing what I call risk theater. And so that's a lot of these surveys and web scraping. And so I have a whole chapter on risk management and risk theater. Airport security is a lot like that too. So if you read that chapter, just be forewarned that you will never look at flying the same. So the loss of IP is going to come from third-party breaches. And so that's why we have to understand risk from a third party. And the reason I say how to hack your supply chain is I want you to look at your supply chain, at your third parties, and see what they're likely to do, because they're the ones that are going to steal that. I list out at the beginning of my book 5 hacks: Best Buy, T-Mobile, 8 times, by the way, Home Depot, Target, all come through the third party, all through their suppliers. And if you go even deeper down the rabbit hole, you'll find car makers that have had breaches that come through third-party websites that are insecure. So all of that, my answer to all of that question is exactly that, is the third parties.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're nearing the end of our time, but another one here. What's the procurement leadership profile you would recommend to be effective in the transformation and disruption we're going through today?
Yeah, so that gets to the discussion. The first question I asked Anthony from J&J yesterday is, you have to embrace, and that's why I asked him, because I wanted both him and Shashi, his boss, they're both technical people, and I asked them to convey how they'd answer that. And the procurement leadership has to be about technical competency. We are in this digital age. We are now in the age of AI. So we have to cut through all the nonsense and the hype, and leaders need to do that, because we can't be buying 6-7 figure deals for software that sits on a shelf that, like, we've had several questions about ERP and P2P and S2P. All of the solutions are, if we're really honest, they're failures. They're development failures, deployment failures, and just a failure of the profession. And I think I start that with the leaders, because the leaders didn't understand what they were buying, and I don't accept that. And if we're going to be better, we have to understand in this digital world what we're doing. So to me, I don't care if you're old or young, but we have to stop making the same mistakes on digital.
All right, and one last question. Someone wants to know if you're planning to write any more books, and if so, any ideas on topics?
I am planning. I'm already starting another book, because I hate myself, and it's such a torturous process, but it's one I cannot avoid. So it'll probably premiere 2 years from now. So you can mark the date. And I'm not ready to talk about the topic as of yet, because it's still developing, and because where I thought this book went kind of took a circuitous path. But yes, it will be about this topic. And the one thing I will say about my current book, I center me in the book a lot. It's probably shocking. But it is very much me along with pop culture. And I think that was sort of like my presentation this morning. I want to make it relevant to our daily lives. And so pop culture and making it personal. So you can be sure that my next book will have a lot more of that, because I don't know if it'll be fun to read, but it was certainly fun to write.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for all your answers, Elouise. Big round of applause.
Thank you.